Hey friend, it is Kate here. Thank you so much for jumping on my channel and joining me here today. Now, if you are brand new here, we are in the middle of a 30-day challenge. It is a 30-day challenge to start our new year off right, to give some extra self-care, to set an intention for our year. And if you want to start right here and just keep going along with us, that's awesome. If you'd like to start from the beginning, I'll have a little link that you can find that very first video. Know though that it is not about perfection in this challenge. It's about finding what works for your body, for, just giving yourself a little extra self-care, which is today's theme. It's Self-Care Sunday, and as promised, our Self-Care Sundays this month are all about using our foam roller and different myofascial release tools to be really wonderful, gentle, and kind to our body. Again, if you've not heard me talk about it before, I do think myofascial release work is one of the best things that we can do to help relieve any kind of pain in our body. I personally have dealt with a lot of pain in my hips and knees from dancing over the years, and had I not known how to use a lot of the tools that I now have at my disposal, I think I'd be in a very different place physically. Today is really all about the hips, IT bands, all of those middle of the body parts that sometimes can go a little wonky. So grab your foam roller and roll out your mat, and let's get started. Okay, friend, so most of this class is actually going to be using the foam roller, but I do want to show you just something that I find incredibly useful for those of us that have a lot of tension in our hips, and it's getting a rod of some kind. Now, this is one that kind of has the beads on it, and truth be told, I do prefer the straight ones that don't have the beads, both because sometimes my skin gets pinched in the beads or sometimes my hair does. I can't seem to find my flat one. So this one, it still works well. These ones are also pretty cheap that you can find on Amazon. And so if you have a lot of IT tension, a lot of issues with hips, it can be really nice to have this, because rolling out your IT bands on the foam roller for some of us can be downright painful. So this is a really gentle way to do that instead. So if you have a little rod of some kind starting above the knee and just pushing and pulling back across your thigh can be super duper gentle. Or leaning over to one side, lightly tipping your knee inward so you can get into that IT band without a whole lot of pressure. The nice thing about using one of these types of props versus just jumping onto your foam roller at first is you have control over how much pressure you're putting into these areas of your body. Something else is if you work at a desk, if you're sitting at a desk all day long, you could easily just slip this into one of your drawers and then every so often pull it out to give yourself a little self-care in the middle of your day. I am all about finding easy times, places where we can quickly do something nice for our body rather than being mad at ourselves that we couldn't find 45 minutes of our day to come and do some nice myofascial release. And as you see, I just rolled it to the inside of my leg as well. And sometimes we find little sticky spots, just depending on how your body's feeling. You might want to roll over those sticky spots back and forth, or in a rowboat fashion, or just lightly up and down. Then we'll pass it to the other side if you've got one around there. Stay as long as you want to. Take it to that outer thigh. Maybe find some of those lovely IT sticky points. Back to the inner thigh. Yes, I've got a lot of tension right there. My inner right knee gives me a lot of problems. So I spend so much time giving my legs a lot of myofascial release and self-care. So I do have tons of these kind of props in my own house, and I think that they're absolutely worth it. Definitely worth the money. They do wonders for my body. But if we've got one of these, you can keep playing with that if you want to, but I'm going to set it off to the side. Hopefully it won't roll away, and we'll actually come to the foam roller. I know most of us have a foam roller at home. Not everyone has a little bar. So, good food for thought. Now, I want you to take your foam roller and have it sitting right next to you, just up and down. And then I want you to take the front edge and point it in towards like your body or towards away from you. And the back edge is pointing away. And then we are just going to take a seat. So I am on my right side. My right leg is elongated and my left leg is up on top of it. Now, if you have your foot behind or in front, that's okay. Do really whatever works best for you to arrive here. This can be a sensational spot just getting here. So if you arrive and you think, oh, whoa, that's a lot of feels, that's okay. Just breathe a couple of times, allow yourself to settle, to relax into the foam roller. And then from here, all I want us to do is pull the foam roller towards the knee, but not on the knee, just stop right above it, and then push it up towards your hip. So we're just rolling lightly back and forth along the body. And as with all of our foam rolling classes, our myofascial release classes, know that it's not about doing exactly what I'm doing or looking just like me. Instead, I'm trying to give you some ideas of how you can use these props and how you can pay attention to your own body. I think of myofascial release as a conversation between you and your body. The more often you do it, the more you can kind of hear yourself talking and your hips are saying, oh no, we need to spend more time there. You need to like hang out there. And it gets a little easier. It gets a little, it doesn't get totally less sensational, but you don't have to make all the faces the more often you do it, or at least I don't. Now, eventually, after I've gone up and down my outer thigh a handful of times, I roll it into my hip. It's not on my belly at all. It's literally on my hip. And then I like to bring my forearm down and just kind of relax here. And your bottom leg can be straight, it can be bent, really just find what works for you. But usually I hold here for a little bit and maybe rock my hips forward and back. Nothing big, nothing crazy. It's kind of all about just finding the mobility that works for you. So maybe hanging here a little longer, rolling around, wiggling, giving yourself some lovely stretching. And then usually I pause, and from here I kind of lift up so we're not just hiking over and doing not good things for our posture, but try and lift and lower your bottom foot. While, of course, it's not a Pilates class, you could, of course, think exhale, tone the belly, lift the foot, inhale, drop it down. Exhale, lift, inhale, drop. But really it's about kind of giving that hip some much needed attention for most of us. Maybe lifting the foot, holding there, kind of swaying the foot forward and back. Now, if it doesn't feel good to have it up and you kind of reach it forward and back while it's touching the floor, that's okay too. Do what works for your body. Then eventually I let my foot just hang heavy on the floor. Again, that's my right foot. My left foot is on top, and then I'm going to bring my hand to my hip and then step my foot behind me if I had it in front, so I can roll almost onto the back of my glute, the back of my hip, and then lightly onto that side. So just small kind of rolling it back and forth. And remember, we do not have to look graceful or pretty when we're doing myofascial release. You can make all the moans, all the groans, all the faces. Sometimes making the faces makes it a little more bearable, so do what you need to. It's your time to be kind to your body. And then usually I like to rock my hips backward, pause. And then this can be a little bit awkward. Know that you can kind of sit up however you need to. But I start to go up and down kind of the backside of my glute, the backside edge, I suppose. Just back and forth. This is one of those places where I could probably stay for a good 45 minutes. My glutes, my hips, they always need lots of love. From years of ballet and rotating in probably not the most gentle fashion on my hips. Now that I'm getting a little older, I need to do all the self-care that I can. Now again, we can hang out here all we want to, but eventually I'm going to turn kind of behind me for just a second. But I like to come up onto the foam roller and then just a few times kind of rock back and forth. And we'll be back here again, but I always like to do it a couple of times. Now eventually, gracefully or not, come on back down to the ground. Take your foam roller, bring it to your other side. Start with it in line with you. And then angle the front side towards you, the back side away from you. And we'll repeat this to the other side. So I'm going to lift up. This is now my left leg that's on the foam roller. It's long. My right leg is in front. But again, if it works better for you to have it behind, that's okay. Do what works for you and your body. Now again, we might just hang out here for a bit, enjoying the feeling of being lifted, kind of just sinking into it. I'm kind of thinking about my muscles softening, relaxing, letting them almost, melt around the foam roller. And I will tell you already for myself, this side feels much more sensational for me than the other side. And that's totally fine. That probably just means I need to spend a little more time here than I did on the other side. Or maybe I will think about what I've been doing lately. And have I been more active on one side than another? Now, eventually, we'll start to push and pull the foam roller back and forth. Remember, we don't want to roll on our knee whatsoever, so I'm staying just kind of from the top of my hip right above my knee back and forth. And as I go back and forth, I do start to pull it up a little higher into my hip, and then still I'm pushing it so it stays right above the knee. Nowhere down the knee do we want to get that foam roller. And then when and if we feel ready, we'll roll it into that kind of hip clunk. I always feel like a big bloop. If that noise resonates with you, I hope it did. If not, that's okay. It's on my hip. I'm just going to let it sit there. I'm going to let myself relax and sink into it, kind of soften. Hand can be on our hip. We could take it behind our head if we feel like our neck's having a little tension, or we can just keep it wherever we want to. But eventually from here, I'm going to start to lift and lower my bottom foot up. Again, if we want to use our Pilates breath, exhale, lift, inhale, drop. Exhale, lift, inhale, drop. A handful of times. No rush, no worries. And then lifting and holding, and maybe we want to just keep it there, or sliding the toe forward and back. Ooh, making all the faces we need to while we do this. Knowing it is all about what works for you and your body. You're doing fabulous. And then dropping the foot down and taking your top leg behind you if it's in front. And then we're just going to rock to the back edge and rock forward. Rocking back and forth. Hopefully you do not have a mic pack in your way like I do. And again, you might find that one side is way more sensational. And quite honestly, if we're in a spot that is really painful, I hope that we know that there should be a difference between, oh, whoa, that's sensational, and oh, that just straight up hurts. There is definitely a line of kind of getting used to the feeling of myofascial release and like deep tissue massage. So if you're not used to it, know that you can kind of ease yourself in with just a few minutes. You don't have to do as long as I am if it's just not in the cards for you today. No big deal. And then I lean kind of back and I start to push it up my glute and then down. And sometimes you've got really slippery pants on like I do, and you're kind of slipping off and on, and that's okay. Again, no need to be graceful when we're doing this. The more often you do this kind of work, and you don't necessarily have to follow me to do it, you can kind of explore on your own. I think that it's a really fabulous time to do while you're relaxing at the end of the night, maybe watching TV, just pull out a prop or two and kind of roll around on your living room floor. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then like we did on the other side, we're going to push ourselves all the way up to a seat and rock back and forth. And I'm actually going to turn this way so we can talk more specifically. But from here, all we're going to do is tip our pelvis forward and back. I'm lightly tipping it forward and back. It's almost like we're coming into our Pilates C curve, but I'm not so concerned with exactly what you look like. Hands can be underneath your thighs. You could grab a table or something nearby you if you need a little extra support. But just going back and forth a handful of times, enjoying the way that feels. And then usually from here, I'll lean lightly back and just take my hands. And if this is not comfortable for you, you can always skip it. But I like to sway my knees side to side. Now, eventually we're going to use this as a lovely supported bridge. I'm actually going to turn around so the camera can see me a little bit better. But you can start right here where we are. All we're going to do is lay back on it so the foam roller is supporting your sacrum. Now it is very important that the foam roller is not on your low back. So let me show you the right way and the wrong way. Though I find it easiest just to lean and roll all the way back. Now do you see that the foam roller is really like underneath my butt, underneath my sacrum? If you get here and you feel like you're ridiculously arched and your butt is kind of reaching down, that's because our foam roller is underneath our lumbar spine, our low back. Press into your feet, lift your hips up, and slide it so it's underneath your tushy instead. The idea here is that it's almost trying to force your pubic bone straight up to the sky. So if you feel like you're still arching here, think of imprinting your spine like we would in our Pilates class, like the small of your back is trying to reach towards the mat behind you, and think about flattening out through the front of your hip crease. You can even bring your hands to the front of your hip, and notice if you arch back, there's kind of a little crease there. If we tuck in the opposite direction, we flatten out there. Now personally, I like to hold on to the side edge of the foam roller just so I don't feel like it's gonna whoosh out from underneath my tushy there. And then I want you to lift your right leg up. Now you can see my knees bent because it's not about a big stretch to the back of the body. Right now I want us to focus on some mobility in that ball and socket joint, just circling the knee around. So teeny tiny little circles. Other direction. And then if we do want a little bit of a stretch to the back of the leg, maybe extend the leg up high and flex the foot. Now for me, again, I'm lightly tipping my tail forward, trying to press my pubic bone up. I'm actively flexing my foot, thinking of pulling my toes towards my face, and I'm sending my heel up to the sky so I get a little bit of a stretch to the back of my leg. Maybe we lightly kind of windshield wiper that leg side to side. Maybe you find a few more circles. Find whatever feels good. It's all about your body, giving yourself a little attention, and then eventually you're going to cross the leg over, so we're in a little figure 4. Actively flex both of your feet, hang onto the foam roller, and then I want you to lift your bottom foot up, still tucking the tail. Now with my leg lifted, I can pull my left knee in towards my left shoulder and lightly open out through the right leg. If you feel like your right knee is curling in towards your armpit, take your hand not to the knee, but to the middle of your thigh and lightly push it out and away so you open up there. Maybe we hold here and lightly rock side to side. Maybe we play with extending or bending the knee, but just give yourself a little time. This is one of my favorite things, both for my hips, my glutes, but also my low back as well. I could hang out here for quite some time if I was in the mood. And then unravel whenever you feel ready. You might need to adjust. Maybe you've got slippery pants on like I do and it felt like the foam roller was kind of winging out there. That's okay. But eventually hold on to the foam roller, lift your opposite leg up, and find a couple of circles, moving that knee around. Both directions. And then again, if we want to extend it up, flexing, I'm thinking of my heel lifting up. I'm thinking about my toes pulling towards my face, actively turning on all the muscles in my leg and really finding that length through the back of the hamstring, through the back of the leg. No hurry, no rush. We can cross that little leg over when we feel ready. And again, you could, of course, totally stay here. You do not have to lift the bottom leg up at all if you're not in the mood. This is really gentle and relaxing as it is. But I do like to hold on if I do take my leg up. And for me, the more I actively flex both of my feet, not only do I protect my crossed left ankle, but I find I'm able to get a little deeper into my glute, into that piriformis muscle a little bit more, and maybe take a little sway side to side, maybe rock back and forth. And again, both sides can be so different. It's okay if we don't do something exactly the same way from one side to the other. What do you want to play with? What do you want to explore with? Now this time, instead of taking your feet all the way down, just unravel and pull your knees into your chest. If they open up more towards your shoulders, that's okay. It kind of is what feels better in your hips right now. But go ahead and lightly rock side to side on the back of your body. And then if we want to, we may want to elongate both legs. Now this will open up through the front of the psoas, but this is a bit of an upper body stretch too. If it's too much, you just do whatever works for you. I like to take my legs a little bit wider than my mat, maybe close my eyes and let myself just hang out here. And know that we can stay here as long as we want to, because this is one of my favorites. But I also do like to bend my knees, plant my feet into the floor, and then lift your tushy up so you can slide it from underneath you, and take both feet on top of the foam roller. From here, allow your knees to fall to each side. Having your feet lifted up to about hip height can be a very gentle way to do feet together, knees apart, something we often do in our yoga classes. But when they're on the ground, they're lower than your hips, and it can be a little bit more rough if we've got any kind of hip tension. You might find that it feels nice to lightly push and pull your legs in and out. It's almost like they're little froggies going back and forth. And your hands can really be wherever feels best. And then eventually I like to plant my feet into the foam roller and imprint my spine so I get a little bit of elongation through my back. And then from here, I just want you to push the foam roller out and away and let your ankles hang out on it. We're going to take our hands way over our head, and I just want you to find a great big full body stretch from the tip of your toes through your body, out your fingertips. And from here, I want you to cross your left ankle over your right, and then take your hands to the right side of your mat so your body becomes a little bit of a banana shape, a little crescent. And then back to center when you're ready. Uncross. Take the right ankle over the left and your hands to the right. I'm sorry, to the left. Rights and lefts are hard, friends. No hurry. Bring it on back to center. Go ahead and pull your knees into your chest again. And this time I want you to hold onto your knees and lightly circle them away from one another. And then circle them towards one another. Pull your right knee into your chest. Let your left leg be long on the foam roller. If your foam roller moved away, it's not the end of the world, but again, it's kind of nice to have it lifted up to about hip height. And circle the knee around in that ball and socket joint right here. You might want to grip underneath the knee. You can take your left hand to the front of your left hip and ever so lightly pull your right knee up towards your right shoulder. And then let that leg go, pull your opposite leg in. And same thing here. Kind of circling it around if you want to. Noticing what feels different from one side to the other. And then again, if you want to cradle your leg underneath with your left hand and take your right hand to your right hip, I am ever so lightly pulling my my left leg up towards my left shoulder. Just finding a little bit of a stretch along those inner thighs. And then let that go. Go ahead, roll to one side. Push yourself gracefully or not up to a seat. As always, give yourself a pat on the back. Thank yourself for doing something so good and just for you. I hope you enjoyed our self-care Sunday using our foam roller to relieve some tension, some pain, some uncomfortable feeling in those hips. I cannot wait to see you tomorrow, and I really hope you enjoyed today's part of our 30-day challenge.